foremost, I want to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which is all praise to the Most High God, Yahweh, in the name of his beloved Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, whose name in the real Hebrew is Yahweh Shai. I'm going to give double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, the 144,000, and the great number that listen and learn this truth that will also be redeemed. Is this why the vaccine came before the chip? Everybody knows the microchip is the mark of the beast, or should I say, if you're learning from the men of Great Millstone, starting from the elders on down, you know this, that the microchip is the mark of the beast. But what's been puzzling to us is why they've been pushing so hard for the vaccine before they make the chip mandatory. And in my research and digging around on this coronavirus and everything this, it entails, everything being on lockdown, not being able to go to the stores and buy nothing, at the pace that we want to buy it to prepare for what's coming. They got everything locked down on the grid. And now they're pushing the vaccine. We see the military. We see how they're putting them out on the streets. We know they're getting prepared for upheaval amongst the people. People are wondering what's going to happen. What is this all about? The masses of people are waiting for the vaccination to hit the stage. But what exactly would this vaccination do?
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over.
Y'all heard about that. Y'all heard measles done came back, right? Now, who has been in one of these classes before? I've given this breakdown on vaccinations before for years. Who has heard any class that we have taught in the UPK about vaccinations? Gadalhar, Captain. Get vaccinated. Now, how many years have I said that? This is when I said it, back when measles were gone. The measles were not here. But you so goddamn dumb, and you got the internet put on your home, and you got a phone with Facebook in it. So your stupid behind went out and didn't get your kids vaccinated. Well, the measles are back. And contagious like the goddamn plague. Brother, this strain of measles, if I had the measles in here tonight and I left.
Man, sit your ass down.
I do want to talk about occupations. There's certain occupations where, if I'm not mistaken, you have to get vaccinated on certain things. I know the military, 100%. If you don't want to get any type of vaccine, you are kicked out of the military. And I believe in the medical profession as well, because why? You're around sick people all day. So I'm saying it because I remember a sister was calling and crying. She's a nurse and she didn't want to get a vaccine. If that is it, hey, we get vaccine. We go traveling. We had to get the yellow fever shot and some other things. Get the vaccine if you have to. If you don't want to, then leave certain professions.
Standing in the office of the prophet of God, I execute judgment on you, COVID-19. I execute judgment on you, Satan, you destroyer, you killer, you get out, you judgment on you. I demand a vaccination to come immediately.
Yes.
Excuse me, on the left over here, we have individuals who are religious fundamentalists, religious fanatics, and this is the expression, RT-PCR, real-time PCR expression of the VMAT2 gene. Over here, we have individuals. So let me complete. So over here, we have individuals who are not particularly fundamentalist, not particularly religious, and you can see there's a much reduced expression of this particular gene, the VMAT2 gene. Another evidence that supports our hypothesis for the development of this approach. What you see
here is by spreading this virus, we're going to eliminate individuals from donning on a bomb vest and going into a market and blowing up the market.
So our hypothesis is that these are fanatical people, that they have overexpression of the VMAT2 gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior. So we have some very, very remarkable data in this next slide. Here we have two brain scans. These are fMRIs. These are two different individuals with different levels of expression of VMAT2. On top is an individual who's a religious fanatic, an individual, and we've repeated this numerous times, that has high levels of VMAT2. Now, this individual down here who had low levels of the VMAT2 gene, this individual would self-describe as not particularly religious. In each case, these individuals were read a religious text. This individual lit up the right middle frontal gyrus, shown here, and that's a part of the brain that's associated with theory of mind. It's a part of the brain that has to do with intents and beliefs and desires. In contrast, in marked contrast, here's an individual who would not particularly self-describe as religious, and when they're read a religious text, what you see is that this part of the brain called the anterior insula lights up. This is a part of the brain that's associated with disgust or displeasure on hearing something.
So you're suggesting I take a CT scan with me when I'm evaluating people to determine whether they're
So the data that I'm presenting here supports the concept that we're proposing, and I think that we would not propose to do CT scans or fMRIs on individuals out in the hinterlands of Afghanistan. The virus would immunize against this VMAT2 gene, and that would have the effect that you see here, which is it's essentially to turn a fanatic into a normal person. And we think that will have major effects in the Middle East.
How would you suggest this is going to be dispersed in the
Well, so the present plan and the tests that we've done so far have used respiratory viruses such as flu or rhinoviruses, and we believe that that's a satisfactory way to get the exposure of the largest part of the population. Most of us, of course, have been exposed to both of those viruses, and we're quite confident that this will be a very successful approach.
This is fascinating. What's the name of this proposal?
Yeah, so the name of this project is FunVax, which is the vaccine for religious fundamentalism.
And you have a proposal already?
The proposal has just been submitted, and I think that the data that I have shown you today would support the development of this project, and we think it has great promise.
I'm going to talk today about energy and climate. And that might seem a bit surprising because my full-time work at the Foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds, about the things that we need to invent and deliver to help the poorest 2 billion live better lives. We need to meet a new constraint, and that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet, and the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, you know, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. Now that's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.